CSG and CRDS are really often misunderstood by people and expats coming in France. First of all, these contributions are social contributions that are different from the tax, like income tax, corporate tax, and so on. So one way you have the tax system and the other way you have the social system. And CSG and CRDS are part of the social system. CSG is used to finance general health insurance, family benefits, and retirement solidarity funds. On the other side, CRDS is used to refund Social Security accumulated debt. CSG and CRDS are very particular. Indeed, they hit almost every revenue, every income you can make in France. Salary, wage, remuneration, interests, capital gain, real estate gain, almost every revenues. And you can add retirement pension. CSG, CRDS are everywhere. You cannot escape them in France. CSG and CRDS are often confused with social security contributions. So what's the difference? The truth is that social contributions, social security contributions, are the whole package. And CSG and CRDS are just a subpart of these social security contributions. But they are famous because their rate is kind of high. First of all, CSG rate is famous to be 9.2%, with a deductible part and a non-deductible part. 6.8% are deductible, 2.4% are not deductible, but I will come back on this later. But this 9.2% of CSG can vary depending the revenue you make. For instance, if you're retired and you pay CSG based on your retirement pension, this rate can be lower. On the contrary, if you made finance and capital gains since 2026, the rate increased from 9.2 to 10.6%. CRDS is fixed no matter what. The rate is 0.5%. You have to pay CRDS based on your salary, you will pay 0.5%. You must pay CRDS based on your capital gain, you will pay 0.5%. No matter what, it's fixed. Now, remember what we said about CSG. The classic rate was 9.2% CSG. But as we said, it can vary based on the kind of revenue you make. Let's suppose you receive unemployment benefits from France. As this is unemployment benefits, yes, you will pay CSG, like everybody and every revenues, but the rate will be lower, 6.2%. On the contrary, if you make capital gains, big capital gains, yes, again, you will pay CSG, but not the classic 9.2%, but 10.6%. In the end, do not forget that you pay the combo of CSG plus CRDS. So if you are submitted to the basic rate, the classic CSG 9.2%, 9.2% CSG plus 0.5% CRDS gives you a total of 9.7%. If you recently arrived in France as an expat and you earn a salary, take care and pay attention to your payslip. In your payslip, you will see one line with CSG, non-deductible part, a second line with CSG, deductible part, and finally a third line where it's written CRDS, and you will directly recognize the rate we just discussed in this video. Now that you understand a little bit better this CSG and CRDS thing, let's get into the deductible part and non-deductible part. What does this really mean? This means that if you pay the classic rate of 9.2% CSG, 6.8% will be deductible from your income tax return. What does it mean exactly? It means that not the whole part you pay, not the 9.2%, But the 6.8% part, you will be able to remove this from the revenue that is submitted to income tax return in France. This is complicated because finally CSG CRDS is not tax. This is not the French tax authorities. This is social contributions. But as you already paid something, you will be able to take just 6.8%, the one you paid, just this part, and to deduct this from your French revenue that will be submitted to tax, income tax. So far so good. So if you followed correctly the video, the 6.8% will be deductible from the revenue that is submitted to income tax. So finally, the total salary and revenue you make is just smashed down. And this is this smaller part that will be taxed as you were able to deduct the 6.8%. This means that the complement is 2.4% because 6.8 plus 2.4 is 9.2%, the famous CSG rate. This complement, 2.4%, will not be deductible from your taxable income. And this is exactly the same thing for CRDS. CRDS is never deductible. Now, here is the last part that can be very confusing for expats coming in France, especially when you have several revenues around the world. So let's imagine you make revenues from your native country, interest, capital gain, companies revenues, or any revenues from your native country. And in France, you receive a salary. The question is, how is it considered in the tax treaty, CSG and CRDS? Are they considered as taxes or as social contributions? Because if you remember what I said, in France, social contributions, I mean CSG, CRDS, and taxes are two different things. And sometimes it is possible that you are double taxed in your native country first and in France a second time, even if there is a tax treaty. Most of the time, if you read tax treaty carefully, the tax treaty between France and your native country, you will find that you will be granted a tax credit from the amount, let's say, you paid in your native country. So let's imagine you made interests in your native country, you were already taxed 100. It is widely possible that in France you will be granted a tax credit of 100, not to pay taxes twice. But if CSG and CRDS are not understood in the tax treaty as taxes, but as social contributions, you will be taxed in France based on these interests that you already paid taxes on. You will be taxed here for the CSG and CRDS part. So your thing will be to read carefully the French US tax treaty, the French UK tax treaty, and so on, the one you are interested in, and read in this treaty if CSG, CRDS are considered as taxes or social contributions, because depending on the sentence that is written in the treaty, either you will be granted a full tax credit and you will not pay taxes at all a second time, or it is possible that you are taxed a second time, but just for CSG, CRDS in France. And in this case, in total, it will be very costly to pay taxes in your native country, let's say US, and to pay here in France based on the same revenues that are already taxed in the US. CSG plus CRDS.